I can close my eyes when we are in that meditative state, trying to identify where your blockages are, because we use different tools. One of them is visualization. When we do visualizations, I can actually envision where your blocks are with you.
Welcome to the Be a Better You podcast. I'm your host, Allison K. Dagny, a passionate women's empowerment coach dedicated to guiding you towards your highest potential. Join me each week as I dive into empowering strategies and mindset shifts to help you rise above obstacles and thrive in every aspect of your life, empowering you to reach your goals, unleash your true potential, and live life on your own terms. Learn how to unlock your inner strength with tools, tips, and techniques to transform into the best version of you. Tune in and let's embark on this journey together. Your empowerment starts now. Welcome back to the Be a Better You podcast. I am your host, Allison K. Dagny, and today I have a really interesting conversation to present to you with a very special guest. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself to the audience, and we'll jump right in and get started.
Hi, I am Luisa Anderson. I am an awakening coach and energy healer. I am a certified crystal and chakra healer. I use my intuitive abilities to assist people in the chakra healing process, whether it's chakra alignments and helping identify any shadows and working through from an energetic perspective with the chakras to help them heal.
That's so exciting. I'm so excited about this. Thank you so much for being here and being on our podcast today, because I don't know a lot about this. And, I'm just sort of learning and kind of dipping my toe into this. I work in human design, as you know, and that is based in part with the chakra systems, but it's not something I've really ever investigated or explored very deeply. So I'm really excited for you to be able to shed some light on this and give us some information, because my podcast is really meant to help people in self-development and personal growth to be the best versions of themselves that they can. So whatever they can take with them from listening to us talk is amazing for me and amazing for everybody. So let's talk a little bit about, first, I want to hear your story. Like, I want to know how you came to be. Like, somebody just doesn't like one day wake up and be like, I'm going to be a crystal healing intuitive person, right? Like, how did your journey get you here? Do you mind to share that?
No, of course, I love sharing my story. That's my favorite thing, is talking about myself. So to make a really long story short, I'll give you just like my overall like life story that got me here. I have a very traumatic childhood. I was born in a third world country. I was brought to the United States to live with my father, which turned out to not be my father, not living with my father, not that he wasn't my father, but at the age of 6. But I experienced abandonment from when I was born. My mother left me with my both grandmothers, when I was 3 months old, and then has been in and out of my life ever since, really. And then when I was brought over to the United States, the intention was that I was going to be living with my father, who was a very young guy at that time. I think he was 27 years old, and a bachelor in a new country with what at the time was considered, a very nice lifestyle. So I was actually brought and lived with my aunt and her family specifically, but my family lived in a apartment building where there were like 8 apartments. And so I was just kind of nobody's child, is always the way that I've referred to it. And so living with them, it was very much, I was nobody's child. I was the only person in my very big family that didn't have a mother, and I was treated as such. In my father's family, that was basically amounting to nothing and nobody caring about you. And so that was the beginning of my life. That was a very traumatic. And so start. Then I lived with my father, who went through. Was married one time for a few years, but then after that, it was very much like in and out, a lot of different women. There was no stability whatsoever. And so at the age of 17, I decided that I was pretty much done. I knew that I never belonged and I knew that I didn't know love. So the first person that I met that showed me love, I went with, and I had a child at the night at the age of 19. Um, and so after that, I kind of just started to realize while living with this person that was actually great and has been very impactful in my development and still is a part of my life today. Um, just kind of learned what love was. That was the first time that I really understood what it was like for someone to love you and for someone to really love you without condition. You know, there wasn't something that was expected back. I started my journey. Education was always really important to me, and so he made sure that I stayed in school. I got my associate's degree and started my bachelor's degree, but it was difficult right after having a child. And so the world brought me back to my own country, back to Dominican Republic, where I was able to, with this person's family, just really see love. It was the first time in my young adulthood that I really understood this is what love looks like. This is what family means. And it was a very bittersweet experience, but I think that it shaped me into who I am now in a very big way. The way that I love and the way that I expect to be loved. And so, yeah, after that, I came back. On my own with my son, we experienced homelessness together because I am very stubborn and refused to ask for help from my parents at that point. And I went through a lot of different things that were very painful and even more traumatic. But ultimately, I met this man and we were married. We got married for 10, we were married for 10 years. And about a year ago, a year and some months ago, he came home unexpectedly and let me know that he wanted a divorce. And it was very unexpected. So what brought me to this journey specifically was just that when he verbalized to me that he wanted a divorce, it really rocked my world because I really understood and felt like this was the person I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with. Um, and so shortly thereafter, while I was spending more time by myself, it's when I realized that I was seeing angel numbers. And angel numbers, I started seeing them in my shower, and I think I shared this a little bit, but I have really curly hair. My natural hair is extremely curly, but it's just I'd never noticed them turning into numbers before. And it wasn't just one number, it was sequences of numbers, and it was throughout the day. And I finally Googled those numbers, and yeah, I came up with angel numbers was the first thing that showed up for me. And ever since that day, I've been following the guidance that those numbers give me, and they show up everywhere for me. They show up whether I look up and see it on my clock, whether I see it on license plates, whether I see it on billboards or whatever it is, those numbers have guided me to where I am today.
Wow, what an amazing story. And I'm, really proud of you for where you're at right now because, you know, from going to the United States, you're this little child, you felt like nobody's child, right? And then experiencing what love was, as you got a little bit older, and then having sort of the rug pulled out from underneath of you, right? In
Yeah.
a totally unexpected way. Um, that's a lot to deal with. So you had these things happen to you, and obviously I believe that this journey for myself, the journey for you is taking you exactly where you need to be, even though we have to go through these rough times. Um, and then you started seeing these numbers, and now all of a sudden you're in this totally different place in your life because of that whole experience.
Yeah.
So where did because you help people now, you help people with their spirituality, with their awakenings, aligning their chakras and healing and all that stuff. Like, how did you get involved with it? How did you start learning about it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it happened. So when I started to get the angel numbers, I think that's what I call is the beginning of my spiritual awakening because I grew up Catholic. I call it loosely Catholic because my family partook in whatever aspects of Catholicism they they thought to be appropriate. But that was the belief system that I grew up under. And so when I started to see angel numbers, the angel thing, the angel part of it, I understood a little bit. I was like, okay, I know about angels. But I also started to question myself in a lot of ways. And the beginning of that was from a spiritual and religious text, because I knew that I didn't align with Catholicism. But what did I align with? I had no idea. I had no clue. And so that was a phase in which I started to go inwards. I know that at one point, one of the messages was that I needed to, like, what do I want? It was like, that was the question, is like, you need to ask yourself what you want. And I had no idea. I had no idea. I had no clue. I knew what I wanted for my family. I wanted, my kids to continue to have the great lifestyle that we'd had. I knew that I wanted for us to be able to stay in the house so that the kids could have the stability. I knew what I wanted, and I'm putting this in quotation marks, for everything outside of myself. I'd
Mm.
never questioned what I wanted. And at some point, soon after that angel number message, I think the next one was to try meditation or something. And I had tried meditation throughout the years. I had always tried, but I never was able to do it successfully. And I took in that moment, I remember I was sitting on my bed and I had my phone, because I look up the angel numbers on my on the Google, of course. Um, and I went into the nearest closet that I could sit at. And it was like the smallest closet in my house, but I was just determined to try it. And I meditated for 2 minutes. And those 2 minutes changed my life, like to this day. They changed my life because it made me realize that there's like this whole world inside of me that I had never explored, because I was so busy living in, keeping up the white picket fence lifestyle, keeping up the look, keeping up like my daughter was in private school and keeping up with that and everything that comes along with that. And my son was in school and had all these things going on all of the time, and cleaning the house and making sure it looked picture perfect all of the time, and
Yeah.
everything except myself. And so those 2 minutes were very powerful. I started meditating then on a regular basis. And that was really the turning point for me. After I started meditating, I realized there was all these emotions and all of these things that I'd never addressed,
Mhm.
even though I'd been in therapy for most of my life, because I already had a very traumatic childhood.
Mhm.
Um, I started journaling. So then I started eventually a morning routine that I would not allow anything or anyone to break. And I started to get up earlier than I used to, because I had to fit it in somehow, but my external life had not changed. All of the changes were only inside of me. And really, journaling broke me. I think it was what allowed me to really break myself down
Mhm.
and just see myself
Yeah.
fully
Yeah.
without judgment, and
That's
just allow myself to cry and
yeah.
feel everything that I needed to feel.
Yeah, that's so powerful too, and I've often, I've mentioned this a couple of times on my podcast too, is, to sit with yourself in silence, right? You can put some like nature music on, or some, I use like theta brainwave sounds or whatever. You can get those things on YouTube anywhere for free, and you just pop it in your little headphones and you just sit, right? And that's uncomfortable for a lot of people. Even 2 minutes is extremely
Yes.
uncomfortable, but that's
Yeah.
how you get to know yourself.
Yeah.
With
It
all
is.
the other distractions are happening around you, it's keeping you from being with yourself. So I
Yeah.
love how you said, like, I just made this routine and I just carved this time out because nothing else was changing outside. All these other things are still happening, but you've got to find the time to meditate, to journal, to do those things for yourself, for your healing. If not, we're just repeating the same patterns, the same things over and over again. So this is
Right.
really exciting. I love this. I love this story. I'm so glad that you've shared it with us. And thank you so much for your vulnerability there. Um, do you mind if we start to talk a little bit about the chakras
Yes.
and the gifts that you have and how you help people with this? Because first and foremost, let's just answer the question. Some people probably have heard the word chakra before, but they probably don't know what it is. So
Yeah.
let's break that down first, if you don't mind.
Yes. So the chakras, when we think about the idea that everything is energy, then we understand that we too are energy. And the chakras are the 7 main energy centers in our body. And for a visual, we can envision them as going down your spine. So we can think about it starting from the root of your spine, right in your lower back, and going all the way up and up until your crown, the top of your head, which is your crown chakra. So they hold all of the energy that we experience every single day and all of our experiences. So, for example, if we are feeling the emotion of, let's say, um, self-esteem, low self-esteem,
Mhm.
that energy is held in one of our energy centers, in one of our chakras. And what it does is it impacts that energy center, that chakra, in a positive or in a negative way. In a positive way, it keeps that energetic center flowing because the chakras, you can envision them going down your spine as these little round vortexes, is the way that we envision them. And these little round vortexes, ideally, what they're doing is they're spinning when they're open and when they're balanced. They're flowing regularly, sort of like if you think about a little river or a little pond, if it's moving the way and the wind is blowing in the right direction and everything is working the way that it's supposed to, they will just be flowing. But if that low self-esteem is impacting that chakra, that energy center, then it's not flowing the way that it's supposed to because it's either fully blocked or it's either, going too slow. And then on the opposite end of that, you can have overactive chakras. So spinning too fast as well.
Wow. Okay. So I'm totally on board with you. I totally understand what you're talking about as far as like the energy and all of that. But how would somebody know? Like, how do you know if your chakras are off balance? How do you know? Like, how do you figure out if things are, I use the word alignment, like out of alignment, but like, how do you know if things aren't balanced within your energy centers?
So the first way, I think, because if we're not slowing down, if we're not meditating, if we're not taking the time to like experience stillness, I think the best way to be aware is based on how you're feeling or where you're experiencing from a physical perspective. So, for example, if you are having issues with, let's say, your spine, your bones, your legs, your feet, that's associated with the root chakra.
Mm.
So that's one way to know. If you're having issues with like your reproductive organs, your lower abdomen, your hips, then that's your sacral chakra.
So
If you have
physical body symptoms related to your energetic body, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. That is the way that you would know. And there's some associated with specifically to each chakra.
Okay.
And I think that's the easiest way to identify it. There are emotional aspects of it, of course, and there are, like health conditions that
Mhm.
we associate with it because there's no scientific evidence yet. We're
Mhm.
getting there. But yeah, those are the best and easiest ways, I think.
Wow. Okay. So if somebody were just having like physical symptoms constantly that they've been struggling with, they could, like let's say you're having digestive issues or stomach problems or something like that, maybe look into one of your chakras. I don't know which one that would be, but I know there's ways that you can like charts and stuff that tell you what kind of things are associated with each energy center in the chakras, right?
Yes, there are. Yes, there are charts. They're everywhere. This information is easily
Mhm.
Googleable, and and yeah, definitely do that. Definitely take a look because that's one of the things that traditional medicine misses, right? There's in Western medicine, we don't look at that. So we just go to a doctor's office, and that's not something they're looking at. They're not trained to do that. But you yourself can sit down on a, computer and look up, look up your physical symptoms and just type associated to the chakras or to your energy centers, and that will come up. And a lot of times it's a great place to start because it helps you uncover a lot of other things when you realize, hey, this is associated to that chakra. Then all of the other information that comes along with it will help you identify other things like the emotional aspects of it.
Yeah. Okay. So what about if somebody was feeling like anxiety? Like what if they were just really like they're buzzing with anxiety all the time? Like, is that something like specific to a chakra, or is that overall? Could there be like multiple things out of balance with your chakras at one time?
There could be. So that's anxiety, easily, like we very much associate that with the root chakra, right? That's the root chakra is really much related to like your survival, your connection to reality and your basic needs. So a lot of people who experience anxiety, if that's where it's coming from, then that's closely associated to that. But there is this idea of micro chakras, and that means that within each chakra, there are a whole other, little body systems of chakras. And so the anxiety could be related to multiple chakras.
Okay.
So it really depends on what's causing your anxiety as to what chakra it would be specifically associated with, because
Nice.
anxiety can be caused by so many different things.
Yeah. Okay. So just out of curiosity, because years ago, when I was married to my ex-husband, the emotional abuser who I was with for 20 years, one thing that I felt all the time in my physical body was my throat. I felt like my throat was closing up, or like I had this like swelling in my throat. I felt it, I mean, so consistently all the time. Like that feeling when you're about to cry and you want to hold the tears back, like that was the feeling that I had a lot. So would you, and I don't feel like I have that anymore. And maybe that's because I'm using my voice now and I'm standing up for myself and speaking my truth and all of that. But would you say that that would be something that could have been related to my throat chakra?
Absolutely. And, I had a very similar experience, not because somebody else was holding, was putting that on me, but I was putting that on myself.
Mm.
And the throat chakra, I had a really difficult time opening up my throat chakra and my sacral chakra.
Mm.
And so I think that a lot of women in relationships where they feel held back, where there's abuse, where they're unable to express themselves in the way that they are and in the way that they truly, truly are at their base level, like at who we are, at like our soul level. When you're unable to express your truth to any capacity, whether it's verbal, whether it's emotional, whether it's just your needs or whatever, it is your throat chakra. And
Mhm.
we feel that, we like now that I'm on this side, and as you expressed too, you understand that and you don't have that feeling anymore. But for me, when I was in it, I couldn't identify it. I just knew that I couldn't, it just felt
Mhm.
like it just always felt like you explained that it just wasn't where it should be.
Mhm. Yeah, it felt
Yeah.
like there's no openness, or like there was like something blocking in there, like literally people said a lump in my throat. Like that's what it is. Like it's what it
Absolutely.
felt like for me. So
Yeah.
okay, so this is really interesting, and I'm really happy that you mentioned that you can look at your physical symptoms too, because there might be people a lot listening who are feeling these kinds of things, and they have been on this journey to try to help themselves, and they're like, I need something else. Like maybe I need to have another tool, like getting my chakras imbalanced, or something, different than that they've never tried before. So I want to talk a little bit about, because you mentioned before you have some intuitive gifts, which I believe we all do. We all have intuitive gifts. It's just a matter of knowing what those are and tapping into them, which we can find in stillness and we can find in other ways. But do you mind sharing some of that with us?
No, not at all. Yeah, so I have a few intuitive gifts. I am clairvoyant, which is the vision. So I can close my eyes. For example, I can ask a question, close my eyes, and I get the answer in images.
Mm.
And then I have to interpret those images. I also have clairaudience, which is I can hear. So like I can hear messages. That is not one of my strongest ones, but I have that one. I also have clairsentient, which is I get these feelings in response. Generally speaking, for me, is negative or no is my lower body. and yes or positive is my upper body.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's all of them.
Great. Okay. So how do you use those? Do you use those gifts when you're helping people with their chakras and like their spiritual awakenings and like the healing process?
Yeah, so that's been one of the things that has gotten me really excited about doing chakra alignments is my ability to help people because I can visualize it with them. So
Mm.
using my clairvoyance, I can close my eyes when we are in that meditative state trying to identify where your blockages are because we use different tools. One of them is visualization. When we do visualizations, I can actually envision where your blocks are with you with my intuitive gifts. And it's really powerful because some people don't have the ability of visualizing. If you're new to meditation, if you're new to visualization, if you don't live a life where you are slowing down and where you're paying attention to these things, which I was one of those people, I can actually, for the most part, do that for you and tell you where the blockages are so that we can get working on unblocking them and getting them back in balance.
Wow. So do you need to like visually see, like you can see me now, right? Because we're on Zoom and we're recording this podcast. So you can see me now. Do you need to visually see me or do you close your eyes when you do it? Or like how does that come out for you?
So for me, I need to be in your energy. So you being there and me being here, that is sufficient for me to be able to do
Oh,
that.
okay. So you could do
Yes.
it virtually. It doesn't have to be like in person even.
Right. Yes. Most of the alignments I do are virtual. And yeah, as long as I'm in your energy, I've actually had an experience and it's only been one time, but we guess that this is just something that I need to further develop is being completely away from someone and disconnected for a week. We hadn't talked for a week. And I was actually having, I think it was in my dream, it came to me where their blockages were.
Really?
Yes. And the next time that we met that following week, they expressed that they were feeling something related to that blockage. And I was like, I know why. And it was pretty magical. Yeah, it was magical.
I love that you have that ability to be able to help people on such a, you know, a deep level where, especially if they aren't able to tap that in that moment for themselves, because some people can, right? Some people can do the visualizations, they can figure out where they are, but some people may have, you know, just no clue or just be totally stuck to not be able to figure it out. So that's where somebody like you has these amazing gifts to help them. So I love that. That's so
Yeah.
exciting. So what about you mentioned crystals when you were telling us about who you are. So how do you use crystals in the work you do?
So crystals are very powerful. So I use them in two ways. One of them is if I'm having a hard time connecting with your energy for one reason or another, I use specifically an amethyst and I'll hold it so that it can help me kind of put me in the energy center. That has typically worked. So I use them on myself. Another way that chakra alignments can be done is and I do this to myself. This is the best way that I clear my own chakras because it can be really hard to do on your own sometimes even if you are intuitively gifted. I will use the crystals. I will lay down. And, you know, we talked about the chakras kind of like along your spine. I will lay down and place a crystal on each chakra or on the specific chakra that I want to clear
Mm,
because this chakra's energy, I'm sorry, the crystal's energy will help amplify whatever we're doing. So if we're clearing it, it'll help amplify that. If we are identifying which one is blocked, it'll help amplify that chakra's energy to help us be able to do that.
wow. So do you have to use a specific crystal for a specific chakra center, or do you just use any crystal, or like are there certain ones that you would choose?
So that can go a lot of different ways. So one of the things about crystals is that they have specific healing powers. They do. So based on what type of crystal it is, their healing strength, you know, they're going to heal best certain things. But I'm a big believer in picking your crystals intuitively.
Me too.
And yes, just going for whatever one you are, you know, being called to, whatever one you're feeling. So that's the way that I practice it. There are people who want to ask the questions about, you know, which one's best for this, is best for that. I refrain as much as possible from giving that information because
Mm,
I really believe that the power is in the intention and in what you're feeling attracted to.
I love.
Because your intuition is the strongest thing, you know, it's
I have to tell you this story because I have this little stone here sitting on my desk. It's a little polished black obsidian. And had been struggling with something. I've been struggling with releasing anger. I'd been struggling with trying to like step into my power. And I had been doing all this work. I've been doing all this healing stuff. Like I went to a rage room. I did all these things. Like I literally was like, I was feeling really good. And so I set an intention and I put it out to the universe and I was like, I just need to know everything's going to be okay. And I just need a sign, right? I went to the park. This was the day later after I'd set the intention. I went to a park. I was walking around the park and it was a nice park with like paved sidewalks, like like really nice park. And I walked this one path, okay? And I walked back. And on the same way back, I looked down and I see this stone on the ground. I was like, what the heck? I reached down and I picked it up. I don't know. I have stones, I have crystals, but I don't know all their meanings. And I looked it up and it was about strength and power and grounding. And I was like, what the heck is a polished stone just sitting
yeah.
on the sidewalk right where I walked past. And then when I came back, it was just sitting there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's
This would be one,
wonderful.
yeah, you could use like one like this, like, oh, I'm gonna put this on my throat or put this
Ex-
wherever to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the power. I'm glad you shared that because that's why I believe it's like so much about like the intention and what's meant for you, right? So like grab whichever one is meant for you because there's something there.
Yeah,
I
for
love that. That's
I
so
did.
beautiful.
I actually went to a crystal show with a friend of mine I think it was in September. And I just was really drawn to this one stone. It was a polished, I think it was malachite is what it's called, but it's green and it's really beautiful. And it was all, and I didn't know what it meant. It didn't even have a description on it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just had to have it. And when I asked the person what it was about, it was like, oh, this is about subconscious healing. And I'm like, what? I was like, this is what I do. I was like, it was just wild that was,
Yeah.
what it meant. But I love that you're able to use those tools, right, to help you because I wouldn't know the first thing about like, oh, I have this imbalance in my chakras. Oh, but now I have another tool, right? And crystals can help you kind of unblock those things or get them back in alignment or balanced or, obviously I'm not the expert on that. You are, but I love that we have these amazing tools to help us because I just did a podcast interview the other day with a friend of mine who does similar type of work as you, but she does like what she calls psychic surgery. And that was on last week's episode. But we were talking a little bit about how your body, your physical body and your emotional body, right? Your energy body are connected and you can't neglect them. Like you can't neglect your physical body, you can't neglect your emotional body, right? Mind, body, spirit, the whole, triad is so powerful. So this is what I feel like a lot of people are missing this whole energy piece. We're
Right.
just going about our days and we forget and we neglect. And maybe some people just don't know. Maybe some people just don't have the information.
Yeah, I truly believe that it's a lack of information because, a year ago, I didn't know about this. I found out about the chakras, during my awakening as part of just me trying to heal and literally being on the phone with a friend who's like, balance your chakras. I was like, what is that? What
Yeah.
is that? I couldn't even spell it for months. And I do think it's a lack of information. And I wholeheartedly believe that it is what's missing. I wholeheartedly believe that we really, because Western medicine is not focused on that. We go to traditional doctors and that's not what they're trained to do. Even if it is their belief system, they're not trained to do that. And how are you going to bill, a chakra alignment
Right.
to your health insurance company? It's not something that's built into our healthcare system. And mostly because I think our healthcare system is not so much healthcare, right? It's like health crisis management is really what our healthcare system is. But yeah, I believe that there is so much power in our energetic bodies that we're missing in traditional medicine that's allowing us to continue to remain ill mentally, physically, emotionally.
Yeah.
Because if everything is energy and we're neglecting
Yeah.
to look at that as part of what may be making us ill, then we're neglecting ourselves.
Yeah. And I think also, I 100% agree with you, because we live in a culture and a society where it's instant gratification and we need quick fixes, right? So if you're in pain, you take a pill, or if something's wrong, you get a surgery, or, you just need to do this, or this, go see the doctor, blah, blah, blah. And to me, that is for a lot of, not everything, but for a lot is just treating a symptom, right? I have a headache, I'm going to take medicine, right? But if you're not actually getting to the root cause, and I talk a lot about, the subconscious part, right? Because our beliefs and the things that we have been programmed with are impacting us on a mental and emotional and physical way, right? So I don't believe that there's just this like one size fits all healing either, right? Like I dabble in lots and lots of different things. I use EFT, I use human design. I'm going to start using chakras work, like meditation, like subconscious healing, like find what works for you, but make sure you're getting to the root and not just masking over it, because it's really easy to just be like, oh, I have this emotional pain. I need to take this medicine. And I'm not saying like their medicine serves a purpose. There are people out there. I hope nobody's misconstruing what I'm saying, right? You may need medicine, right? I took medicine when I was deep in my abuse and experience anxiety and things like that. And, for some people, it's absolutely necessary. So you got to balance it out, use what works for you, but don't neglect the thing that could be the root of it all, could be
Yeah.
literally the root.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it. I'm glad you mentioned the root, because that's one of the things that I personally experienced was, I shared I was in therapy for forever, it felt like. But there was still a lot of myself that I had hidden, that I hadn't brought up to the surface. And the question to me was why? Because I believed that I was healed based on the amount of therapy that I had received in my life. But you know what? I never got to the root. I never got to the root, and the root was in my energetic body. That's where it was.
Yeah.
And it's such an important part that you are right. We do live in this culture. And unfortunately, that is what most of us are, basically, I call it trained because that's what it feels like to do is go, take a pill, go to the doctor and get a medication. But I think unfortunately that is what happens when we get to places where we do need to take medication continuously, right? Because once we have some conditions, we
Mhm.
need to take the medication in order to function properly or to extend our lives or whatever the reason may be. But I really do believe that it's because we failed to look at the energetic body.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I'm a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I don't know if you've read his books, but one of my favorite books is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And I'm telling you, that book is like life-changing. It was absolutely life-changing for me to read that book. And it's all about how it's all connected. I remember when I was about 12 years old, because I grew up in like my mom was into all this stuff. She was doing all this stuff, right? I stopped doing it when I met my ex-husband because he thought I was a heathen and like a bad person and all this stuff, and I shouldn't be doing these things, right? Well, I'm back, right? And
Woo!
I'm back, and I'm not afraid to say it. But the thing was, I remember back then she had this book called Heal Your Body by Louise Hay. And it had all the like emotional meanings that were associated with the physical body. And it was so funny because I've never shared this story before, but when I was around 12 years old, I had warts all over like around my cuticles. And my mom was like, do this affirmation, start thinking about these things differently. And it was like, I think it meant belief in ugliness. And so whatever the affirmation was, I was doing it, I was doing it, I was doing it. And the warts started to go away. But I started to get these whiteheads on my face.
Mm.
And then I think that's what it was. And then that one was hiding ugliness. So it was like, just was shifting one from the other, right? And I was young, I was 12 years old, but I was like trying to do this stuff and shift how I was thinking about myself. And it actually worked, except for it wasn't like, probably wasn't at the root really. Like there was probably something still there because something else had manifested in a different way on my body physically. So back then it was like, I didn't even know anything about, like, I knew, heard about different things like this, but I didn't know the power, the absolute power that you have inside yourself to help you heal your body, to help you. And that all is related to what you're talking about. It's
Yeah.
your going on in your mind, what's going on in an energetic level, what's happening inside of you can
Yeah.
actually change what's happening outside of you.
Yeah. And that's where it starts. That's where it starts. What your external world is not going to change until what is happening inside of you
Mhm.
changes, right? And we fail to do that. We fail to teach that. We fail to, make that a part of our lives. Unfortunately, I think because of how much work it seems to be, right? Like the way that we think about it is how much work is it going to take to balance these chakras? How much work, how much time am I going to have to put into, getting to the root of things? And
Mhm.
the truth is that, well, it's either now or later.
Exactly. It's going to come up at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, it's now or later. And later, in a more, what I call like a more alarming and detrimental way,
Mhm.
because we're older, our bodies can, deal with less, especially if we haven't been taking care of it properly. And yeah, and I think that when we think about whether it's now or later, it's up to us, When I'll share this story. I was in Vancouver and we were doing oh, it's a very famous, I forget what it is, but it's a very famous hike.
Mhm.
And oh my goodness, it took us like 3.5 hours. All right. We're two young adults, okay? And this was last summer. So we're two young adults and we're really struggling to get through. It's very steep to get all the way to the top. And we see this lady. She's gotta be like at least 70 something years old. And she's walking alongside us for a little bit, and then she just passes us. And about an hour later, we see her again. And I was like, oh, did she turn around to my friend that I was with? I was like, did she turn around? Maybe she like forgot something, dropped something, and maybe she's, just turned around and is coming back. And my friend looks at me and goes, this is her second time up.
What?
Yeah, she did it 3 times that day.
Oh my
She
God.
did it 3 times that day. And so, when I think about it now or later, is like, well, am I going to be able to do that in my 70s if I don't take care of it now?
Mm.
Because it's not just my physical health, it's my energetic health, it's my emotional health, my mental health. What is in my subconscious? What
Mhm.
has happened in my past that I haven't addressed,
Mhm.
that I haven't released? Because you have to release it. From like the chakra work is, I when my kids are like, oh, I don't want to cry, I'm like, please cry,
Mhm.
please do cry. If you feel like crying, we have to release it.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. It's like we are either going to release it now, deal with it now, so we can be that lady going up the third time, passing by the early 30-year-olds, or we can, be in a different situation where we're having to take pills and
Mhm.
manage our lives in ways that's not going to give us the best quality of life.
Yeah, I completely agree. And y- there are a lot of people, like I help people get unstuck because there's so many people that would say, well, I would love to be able to climb a hike like that 3 times at 70 years old. But there's something blocking them. There's something in the way that makes them believe that they can't do it, or makes them believe that they're not worth it, or whatever. Like there could be a million reasons that somebody is blocked, right? But what this is about, and this conversation is so important, is making sure that we are using the tools that we have at our disposal, the things that align with us. If you're listening and you're like, chakra work, like I don't want to do that, or like subconscious mind stuff, I don't really deal with that, or generational trauma, I don't really, fine. Like find the thing that works for you. Like it's got to be aligned with what you are drawn to. And there's probably a reason you're drawn to it, right? There's probably a reason that you feel called to chakra work. There's probably a reason that I feel called to subconscious work. There's probably a reason somebody else feels called to something else. So trust your instincts on that, but don't neglect all the pieces and parts of who you are, because you're not just a physical body, right? You're an energetic body too. And you have a lot going on inside of you besides just skin and bone and a heartbeat.
Yeah, yeah, and it's an important, the way that you say it is so important because I think that's why you and I are here. People like you and I and coaches is it's not that we want you to we want you to have all of the tools that are available to you for you to choose which one resonates most with you that's going to help you in this part of your healing process.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that is so beautiful because I know that when I first started my healing, I went to therapy, and I know you did therapy too. And I went for 4.5 years, and it felt great to unload in an office, and probably it healed my throat center a little bit because I got to talk to my therapist for an hour straight every day and she listened to me. But it wasn't actually getting to the root like we talked about before. So I would leave and then I would feel the exact same and come back a week later and pay her every single week to dump my emotions out, but still get triggered and still feel anxiety and still have all these like emotional triggers that were happening. Then
Yeah.
I finally found some other things that led me to what I do now. Then it's like, okay. And I'm still expanding that. I was just telling you because I have behind me on my wall, I have these like sticky notes all over my wall because a friend of mine did this identity matrix reprogramming with me. I'm like, bring it on. She was like, I'll give it to you for free if you give me a testimonial. I'm like, I'm never going to turn down any healing or coaching. Like, absolutely. Like, tell me, I'll do it, whatever. So, yeah, I love that. And I really hope people take something from this. And I hope if you feel an intuitive nudge towards this, go out there, look up Luisa's website. I will put it in the show notes. Just Google chakras, Chakra. Look it up, see where you're feeling things in your body. Just do a little investigative research and see what comes up for you. So, one thing I always ask every person on my podcast before we end is if you could share something with us that not a lot of people in your like extended circle know about you. Maybe people close to you know, but what is something that not a lot of people know about you?
Oh, wow. I've not thought about this.
Yeah.
What do a lot of people not know about me? Oh, I love dancing.
Oh yeah, what kind of dance? Any
Yeah,
kind?
I love it's very Latino dance, but I love bachata is my favorite thing to dance. So a lot of Latin culture dancing. I love learning to dance salsa is another one, yes. But yeah, I love dancing. It brings me like so much joy and it lights me up.
Yeah. Well, and I think you can use dancing to release energy too, right? Like it's a physical movement. I mean, it's not like it's different but like physical movement like Tai Chi or like any sort of physical body movement helps that energy move through you. So
Absolutely.
I'm sure
Yeah.
that happens to you all the time. Every time you dance, you're probably like getting all those emotions in balance when you're doing that. I love it.
Yeah, that's like my go-to on like a day-to-day when I like can't make it to the gym or I can't make it, for a jog is I dance my little heart out before the day starts or in the middle of the day and I'm lit back up and back in balance and let's go.
I love it. Well, is
Yeah.
there anything else? What are you working on? What's going on in your world that you want to share with everybody today?
Yeah, so right now, I am working on actually we are creating a group coaching program. So myself and another coach that I work with who focuses on mindset because as we've talked about, we realize it's not just one aspect of ourselves that has to be healed. So we're creating this beautiful program that brings in the chakras for like the spiritual component of it and works along with the mindset work to be able to help people. So that's what's coming up for me. Yeah, and I'll be putting that out there and sharing it with everyone soon.
Oh, great. Well, I can't wait. You'll have to let me know when it's available. I'll share it on my stories and Instagram and Facebook in case people are interested. But please go down to the show notes and follow Luisa on her socials if you're interested in learning more about this. Get to know her a little bit, go to her website. And I'm sure if you're anything like me, you're open to questions and like messages in the DMs and things like that as well.
I love all that. I love helping in any way that I can. Any questions, any information, I'm here for all of it. So definitely reach out. And thank you so much for having me on here. This is beautiful. And I am glad that I got to share your space.
Thank you so much for being here, and we will talk to you all next week.